universal design is a really big component of this project.
Yeah.
1 in 5 Texans or
Yeah.
Americans really live with a disability of some
Yes.
form. So being
Yeah.
able to design a system with everybody in mind, that if the train is accessible for someone in a wheelchair, it's going to be accessible for a mom pushing a stroller.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point to think about with this train. So, the Japanese Shinkansen train, which we'll be using, it has this fantastic high-speed technology which allows us to go from one city to another so quickly. But the environment that it offers is also extremely good. It's a very spacious train. So it means that in terms of the seating on board the train, whether it's for able-bodied people or providing space for people in wheelchairs, is very favourable. There won't be the sense of being crammed in like you are on a short-haul flight. This is much more spacious than most trains in the world, actually, and wide open spaces. That's what Texas is about, and that's what we're able to provide on this train.
So Graham, I'm hearing a bit of an accent. So can you tell us a little bit about your background, what led you here, and why you're the perfect person to be in the position that you're in?
Well, I don't know if I'm the perfect person, but my background is that I come from the UK. My whole career has been in the rail industry, but it's always been focused on this commercial and customer-facing side. So many of the people working on this project are engineers, they're train operators, and of course, massively important roles in building and running this train. My experience has always been about how do you create an experience for customers that is going to be attractive? How do you attract people to use the train instead of other modes of transport? How do you make it such a desirable experience that people just want to make trips that they wouldn't have done previously? And I've been lucky enough to work on some very big high-speed and intercity rail projects, two in particular. So back in the 90s, I was part of the team that set up the Eurostar service. So that was creating the high-speed train operation between London and Paris and Brussels. I was involved for 3 years in the preparation for that service, so a role quite similar to what's happening at this point with Texas Central, creating that offer, much of which has survived through to this time. And after Eurostar, I went to Virgin Trains, which is one of the major private train operators in the United Kingdom.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, and there was a very big project there to transform the most important rail line in the UK, the one that goes from London to the major regional cities of Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Glasgow. It's really the premier route in that country, but it had become very dilapidated, and there was a big project to upgrade the route, the infrastructure, and to introduce new Pendolino trains. They were called Pendolinos because they tilted. Not as high speed as our train will be here in Texas, but from a customer point of view, a very similar challenge of needing to attract people back to the train to make it popular and an enjoyable and reliable experience. And so those have been the two big projects that I've been involved in. And having done one major rail transformation project, which was European, another one which was in the UK, what better way for me than to have the third one, which is about bringing in the first truly high-speed rail service in the United States. And I feel very privileged to be involved in it.
So one of the things that we often hear when we're out in the public, talking to Texans from across the state, is that they are skeptical that Texans are going to be able to give up their cars and their trucks and their personal vehicles and mobility in lieu of riding on a high-speed train. I also know that adoption rates of things like Uber and Lyft and other rideshare services, e-bikes and e-scooters are rising. So what does that tell us as far as trends in mobility here in Texas?
Well, I think what you've talked about with the rapid adoption of Uber is a sign that people are prepared to make a change, and that's been a very quick one. And really, it means people can also make choices about their lifestyle. So if it's easier to use Uber, for example, you start to question about whether you want to own your own car. So I think there are signs that people are willing to change their behavior very much here in Texas, particularly in Dallas and Houston. But I think it's also important that we don't think of ourselves as being just in competition with the car. Texas Central trains are actually complementary to the car. And we're expecting that most people will come to the train station in a car in some form or another. They may drive their own car and park it at the station. They may be dropped off by their partner. They may take a regular taxi. They may take an Uber. They may want a valet service. But most people are going to come to the station and travel onwards from the station in their cars. And that's probably the biggest difference here in Texas compared to the situation that you normally have in Japan or in Europe, where cities are usually much older, they're concentrated in a city center. There's historical networks of public transit, which make it very easy to get into the main train stations. That's a different situation here. So public transit is developing in Dallas and Houston. DART is a very good service. So that is there, but the reality is that most people are going to travel by car. So the choice isn't really, are you going to give up your car for the train? The choice is, what's the most sensible combination? And using a car, whether it's your own or ride-hailing or taxis, using that to get to the station to do, a 5 or a 10-mile journey for that stretch, that's a sensible use of the car. To do the same at the other end, it's a good use of the car. But doing that long stretch, doing the 240 miles, instead of being on the freeway, allowing the train to do that for you and to do it so much more comfortably, so much faster, so much more reliably, that's a good choice.
So what you're describing then is an integrated, customizable journey experience that's going to be different for each individual traveler based on their needs.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're talking about the actual customer experience on the train, what are Texans looking for that maybe is different than what people on previous projects you were working on were looking for?
So from what I've seen, I think the emphasis on comfort and space.
We like space.
It is a big one, and that's come through the research that we've done. I think everybody likes space. That's the same if you're in the UK or in other countries. But in those countries, people have become more used to being very congested. So people are used to the roads being highly congested. They're used to being on trains where they may have to stand. So even if they desire space, people on many other rail networks are prepared to compromise on it. I think Texans will be less likely to compromise. They will expect to have a good amount of space for themselves on the train, but also when they're in the stations, and to have comfort. So I think there are high expectations of comfort here. And as I mentioned earlier, the good thing is that with this train, we can really deliver on that. We can provide a very spacious environment with good, seat pitch, lots of, leg room, lots of comfort.
Yeah, and there are no middle seats on these trains, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
No middle
seats at all.
So I'm never going to have to jockey with my
No.
the person sitting to my left or my right to figure out who gets that middle armrest.
No way.
Awesome.
Right. Yeah, that's a great benefit.
Yeah.
I've seen that the seats on the trains in every class, business class, every class, are more comparable to first class airplane seats rather than a typical maybe coach seat that you might be thinking of.
Yes, that's right. And we are planning to have 2 classes on the train, as is normal on most high-speed trains. But it's true that whatever ticket you have, you will have a very spacious and comfortable seat.
So with the two different options then of different classes of service, does that give a wide range of price points for every budget, for every traveler?
Yes, it will, and that's part of the point of it. And as when I started out talking about, people travel for different reasons, and what people are prepared to pay is going to be different. If you're going to visit friends and family, then it's a different matter to if you're heading for a business meeting.
So will there be different price points that give every single type of traveler the option to have a ticket based on their particular budget?
Yes, there will. And of course, the reason for that is we want this train to be popular. We want it to be used by millions of people, and that is the plan. And that will only happen if we're offering prices which are attractive to people, and they're going to feel that that's good value for money for making that choice. And the experience that I have, when I've worked on the other projects that I mentioned, is that that's a really important thing. And it's, when you have a new service to offer and you're wanting to attract people onto it, you have to offer attractive prices. That's what it's all about. And it's true that our prices will vary according to the time of day that you want to be traveling, or maybe the day of the week that you want to be traveling. That's normal. I mean, that's what you experience when you're traveling in other ways. If you're flying, that's normal. The same thing happens if you travel by Uber. There's not a fixed price. So we will be varying the prices according to the level of demand at particular times. But that isn't just about saying it's more expensive at busy times. It's about saying at quieter times, we have lots of seats to sell, there are going to be really good offers for people.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned now some of the research behind, a commercial strategy and customer experience. What is the importance of a investor-owned project utilizing data and data sets to go forward with its commercial strategy and customer experience planning?
So the importance of data is making better decisions. It's understanding at this point what matters to people, but when we're up and running, we'll be using data to understand more what people want, what's working for them, what isn't working, how we can improve the service. At the moment, we're planning the construction of the route, the construction of the trains, but when we're in operation, that's really the start of the journey. That's when we are truly in business, and it will be about constantly improving what we offer to the customers. We're developing concepts now of what people want based on the information and the data that we have, but what people want changes, and what people want varies from one person to another. And when we have people traveling with us for real, then we're going to become even more data focused than we are now.
That sounds so exciting. So when can I purchase a ticket to ride?
Well, that's going to be probably a few months before the train starts operating.
That's a great answer.
All right. Yeah. On that note, thanks, Graham. We've had a great time talking to you. Join us next time for Train Talk.